The Amish are known for being self-sustaining, self-reliant, and not dependent on technology, using pretty much low tech, if any, for their daily lives. One of the big things about the Amish is that they are very devout and they have very strong beliefs. And that really makes a very strong and tight community. And to me, one of the biggest things with the Amish, as far as in an SHTF situation, is that they do have that really tight community. They're very social in their own circles, and they're pretty much, pretty autonomous in their communities. Now, there are about 250,000 Amish in the United States, from what I found, in 28 different states. But one of the things about the Amish is they typically have a lot of children. So the Amish community doubles every 20 years. And that even includes people that leave the Amish communities, and which a lot of people do. It's a very strict code, and people really love the conveniences, the modern conveniences. One of the big things about technology to the Amish is that it creates a very lazy kind of atmosphere. It makes people, dependent on other things instead of just really hard work. And that's one of the big things about the Amish, is that hard work is valued. I mean, that is one of their strict codes. And humility. And then we're also going to talk, though, about, to me, the biggest liability for the Amish in a survival situation as far as SHTF, is that they are passive. They do not believe in self-defense. So we're going to take a look at what the Amish do right and see if we can incorporate some of those things into our preparedness plan. Now, one of the big things that the Amish are very famous for are their buggies. And of course, most do not believe in cars, so they have these buggies and they're horse-drawn, and they take them wherever they need to go. And of course, in those areas, if you live in Amish country, you've seen the buggies going up and down the roads. But they also use bicycles and scooters, and I even saw one girl that was using skates, inline skates, to get around. And again, it's all low technology. These are things that are not powered. And, it goes in line with that hard work ethic. But now there are Amish that will hire people to drive them around. And especially if they're going on long trips and they're doing things like that. Some groups allow it, some don't. But the big thing is, guys, is when it comes down to learning from the Amish, is can any of us really afford to keep a buggy and horses on hand? So having alternate sources to be able to get around. Again, low powered, whether it's a bicycle, having bicycles, keeping them up, having maybe some kind of scooter or a buggy. I've even seen people a lot of times have bicycles with a cart put on the back to be able to take things to and from places. It's a lot faster than walking, and of course you can carry more. Of course, one of the big things with the Amish is they do produce their own food, and they have vast farms. It's one of the reasons why the Amish chose Pennsylvania and of course a lot of surrounding areas in Ohio, Indiana, those areas, because they're just really right to have large farms. But one of the things about having a farm, which is great because you can produce food, they use low technology. So they're using horses, they're using plows, they're using different kind of technology to harvest that's mostly man-made, but also they use generators, which is kind of interesting. Diesel generators are allowed. Now, one of the things about the Amish is there are different sects, there are different degrees of what they will allow and what a lot of them use. And so a lot of these farms have really kind of stepped it up a little bit so they can produce more. But they're still very limited in the technology that they use. But with diesel fuel, they do keep diesel fuel on their farms and things like that to be able to run those generators. And so this is one thing, is having the equipment. If you have a horse and a plow, you've got to have the plow, not just the horse. And you've got to have ways to harvest and to bring that food in. And so that's one big thing that the Amish have, especially with gardening and farming, is that they have the tools and equipment, and they don't rely on, again, modern technology. Now, over the years, of course, land has gotten very expensive, and a lot of people that are from the Amish community really can't afford land and a farm. And so a lot of them have gone into industry. One of the big ones is furniture making. The Amish are really incredible furniture makers. They're craftsmen, and they make really high quality furniture using very low technology. Now, a lot of times they do use compressors, which would require a generator. and they don't have a problem using air compressors, at least a lot of the Amish groups. And so that really aids them, but they still have the know-how and the hand tools to be able to produce furniture and the skill. And so that's one thing that's important now, is to gain knowledge to be able to produce things that you might need, is to look around and think, these are some things that I could probably need to know. A lot of people have basic woodworking skills, and for me, I do. I love to work with wood. I like to make things, but I rely very heavily on power tools. And so being able to know how to dove cut, do a dovetail cut, and to be able to join things together and use pegs, I mean, that is a skill that's really lost, and it's something that we need to consider. Not that we're in an SHTF situation going to be necessarily making furniture, but a lot of times there may be something you need to produce in a survival situation. They've also opened up restaurants. They do quilting, they make mats, hats, rugs. I mean, you name it. If it can be handmade, the Amish are making it and creating a business out of it. And one of the things about SHTF, which a lot of people have just in their mind that it's going to be the zombie apocalypse, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be that way. And a lot of times it's just an economic downturn. Crime begins to rise, and just like it happened in Argentina. I mean, it wasn't a mass civil unrest. It was more of just different things that just life itself began to drop, and people had to start really looking for ways, very inexpensively, to do things. And so being able to barter, being able to have a skill to make something, could really come in handy in an SHTF situation, because typically things start to kind of level out after a while, and people start getting back to a somewhat normalcy, even though it may be a lot less than what it was originally. And so being able to trade and to barter, I mean, that's one of the things that mankind has always done, even from the beginning. And as far as business goes with the Amish, a lot of times they have lumber mills, sawmills, they have grist mills that are run by horses. They know how to produce different products once they get the raw materials. But the big critical key to this whole thing is that you've got to have the equipment. There are some small things that we just don't have a lot of times, and being able to kind of at least have some of those basics. But to be able to produce food and to produce wood and furniture and whatever you need, sawmills, again, having a big water wheel, I mean, that is a lot. And I think that's one of the things that the Amish have going for them, is they've got a lot of that stuff already set into place. And as just regular people living in day-to-day lives in modern technology, we have not only lost the skill, we don't even have the tools to be able to use the skill if we had it. Knowing where these old mills are around us could possibly be a resource in an SHTF situation. We can only live 3 days without water, and of course one of the things that the Amish do is they drill wells, and they have hand pumps, and they can pump the water out and be able to use it not only for living and drinking and bathing, but also for watering the fields. And you may live near a water source, but that water source may be tainted, and you need to make sure that if you're drinking that water, that you have a way to purify it. And when it comes to power, they are very against electricity, but they do use a lot of different ways to be able to have power. One thing that they do, or a lot of the groups do with their homes, are have kerosene lamps. And so they use oil lamps for having lighting in the evening. But they also can use propane lamps. And so they have, in fact, I even saw one where they had a big propane tank with a lamp attached to it in their home. And so they use those kind of things. They also use diesel generators. So they keep diesel fuel there, and this gives them some sort of electricity here and there. But cell phones, things like that, they don't have. But they do use cell phones for business. And so there are some discrepancies or things, or variations of what each group does. Of course, wood stoves are a big part. Gives them heat. They can actually cook on it. In fact, with cooking, they use stoves, wood-fired stoves, which I have a good friend of mine that has one just for that purpose. And being able, though, to know how to cook with a wood-fired stove, especially in your home. Coal is one thing that the Amish use, solar power. They use kerosene, and of course kerosene has a lot of different uses for it, for kerosene heaters and for lamps. They also use batteries, and they charge those batteries, and then you also would need to have inverters. But thinking about things that are non-dependent, one of the things about a diesel generator is you've got to store up enough diesel fuel. Same thing with kerosene, same thing with coal, same thing. I guess wood would be the biggest sustainable way to be able to keep heating, cooking, and have some kind of power. But as far as lamps and having light, being able to store up, kerosene, but of course you need to be able to store that safely. And so doing a lot of research on really how to do that is just smart. Now, one of the big liabilities to me as far as SHTF for the Amish is that they are passive and they don't believe in self-defense. They believe that thou shalt not kill means that you can't kill someone. Now, one of the big things, though, also that the Amish have going for them is they're hunters. They love to hunt. They have their guns, and from what I understand, a lot of them have really extensive gun collections. They like really quality guns, and so, but they use them, and they teach that those are for hunting, and so they provide a lot of their food through hunting. And so that's something that, they're very accurate with their firearms. They're very good with them, and they target practice. And I'm speaking in general terms, but that is one thing that the Amish, though, have as a downside, is if they are faced with a violent encounter, they're not going to be able to defend themselves against their own moral code. But there are some that feel that if they have to face a situation with their families, that they will defend their family. I found it interesting that some business owners actually have concealed carry permits and carry a weapon on them that are Amish if they have a business. And so there are some variations. And again, guys, in an SHTF situation where things are really going bad, sometimes people have to make decisions that might go contrary to their core beliefs. And so hopefully, they would at least defend their families and children. But one thing I think that would really happen in an SHTF situation are the communities that are around the Amish would protect them. One of the big reasons is because the Amish are going to be producing food. They're going to have, livestock. They're going to have, vegetables and things like that they can barter and trade with, plus the skills that they have. And that needs to be protected because it's going to benefit the people in the outlying communities as long as the Amish are able to keep producing food, even in an SHTF situation. And so for me, if I lived on the outskirts of an Amish community or had Amish neighbors, I would be willing to protect them, not only because I just want to protect people and care about people, but because it would be advantageous to me that Amish community could continue to produce food that I would be able to get and be able to use and maybe barter and trade with. And so I think that a lot of people that live in the Amish country would kind of band together and really protect them. And two, just like they hire people to drive them around, they can hire people to be able to protect them. Now, some Amish will not agree with that, just like a lot of times they don't really to cooperate with police when police are looking at crimes against the Amish. But I think that a lot of people will step up and protect them. And of course, there will be areas that will just be wiped out. But one of the great things about the Amish is that it is real rural and it's out from most of your urban environments. And so for people to actually get from there to the Amish could take a long time to do so. And so they may be isolated and insulated somewhat, and then take the communities around them that are willing to protect them. And again, guys, no one knows what a grid down SHTF situation would really pan out to be. And like I said, community is one of the strongest suits of the Amish people. One big thing they do is barn raising. They all come together and they'll build a barn, and then they'll build another barn, and they kind of help each other because that's a really big expense. And so they get together as a community, they make it a big event, it draws people together, it makes stronger ties. And they're very willing to help one another. It's one of the big things about the Amish is they try to stay very humble people. And there are some bad apples, and there are in every culture, but one of the things about the Amish community is they're tight. And that's really a critical thing to have in survival. And so unfortunately today in the world we live in, a lot of times you can't trust. But in the Amish community, they built that trust and they built those relationships. I think one thing that's important as far as building a group or community is finding people that are like-minded that have some kind of moral code similar to your own. I mean, for us, our prepper group, most of those people either came out of our church or they believe pretty much the same way we do. And it really builds a strong bond. And so we all can agree when things are wrong, we can look and say, well, that's wrong. And we kind of all agree that it's wrong. Sometimes if you get people that are from the outside that come in, they may not see your moral code. And so they may disagree. And that can really cause a lot of problems down the road. So having a really strong knit community that you're depending on really is important. But sometimes you're thrown together with people. And so one of the things that Fafal said was when down in Argentina, people that really survived the best were people that drew together in communities and worked together and helped each other. And I think that's one of the strongest lessons that we can learn from the Amish is like-minded people joining together, making a community, and then being better for it. And being able to depend on each other. Because again, guys, lone wolf is out of there. I mean, you are not going to make it long in a lone wolf environment. And so having people and depending on people is just the way we've always been. I mean, no man is his own island. And it's just as important in a survival situation. So guys, if you're serious about prepping and survival, check out Survival Dispatch Insider. It is the most comprehensive resource for prepping and survival, using some of the top names in the survival world. And we upload one video a week that's exclusive to the Insider. So I'll have a link down below in the description. Check it out. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. United States. Prep. Because the better that my neighbor's prepared, the better I'm prepared. And if I can look at the Amish, they'd make good neighbors.